You've just watched the 5th installment in Nashville Public Television's Next Door Neighbor series featuring Nashville's Sudanese community. Here to discuss the program and offer their response is Asrar Babikir, Self-Sufficiency Coordinator for Catholic Charities of Tennessee and one of the earliest Sudanese to arrive in Nashville. Also joining us is Nyawal Tutlum, a student and volunteer with the Sudanese Youth Connection in Gallatin, Tennessee. And Gatluak, Thach, Executive Director of the Nashville International Center for Empowerment. And finally, Dr. Mahmoud, who came to the U.S. to study in 1979 and returned as a refugee in 1996. Dr. Mahmoud is the head of Tennessee State University's Sociology Department. Thank you all for joining us. Dr. Mahmoud, I want to start with you. Describe the conditions on the ground in Sudan when you came back to the United States as a refugee in 1996.
Well, in 1996, Sudan was back to dictatorship after a short period of democratic government. The coup by the Islamic fundamentalists that took place in June 30th, 1989, already sealed off the country from any connections with the outside world. And they started a very violent war against the South, and that dragged in until 2005, when there was a peace agreement. The country very much fell into brutalities. The economic side was going down. All the international community was actually denormalizing relations with the Sudan because of the tortures and the reign of violence that erupted in the whole country, especially against the South. That was not really what the Sudanese wanted. And there was, for the first time, a massive emigration and displacement all over the country. We had estimated by the best estimations possible by the United Nations, something like 5 million Sudanese people in the camps of Kenya and Uganda and in Ethiopia. And then millions went to Cairo and to other countries. So that will have Sudan really falling into one of its worst times of governance in its modern history. That was the situation when I came.
Sudan is a country of incredible diversity. Nyawal, talk a little bit about the differences within the country and how those differences have translated to your experience here in the United States.
Well, Sudan is multi-ethnic, multi-tribal country, and being there is like everybody's in their own little section. Even though we know we're all Sudanese, everybody speaks different languages and traditions are slightly different. So we kept it that way. But here in America, even though everybody's different, everybody kind of come together and share the experiences together. In my opinion, or my experiences in America, it's easier to blend in and to be one with the other group, even though we know the differences, versus back home, it's like you're staying within your own people, I guess.
As you experience that in the United States, when people say, oh, I know someone from the Sudan, or I've had an experience with the Sudanese community, and if that experience doesn't ring true with your own, how do you help those persons understand, well, no, we're actually a very diverse community ourselves, just like you are?
Well, I guess for somebody that does not know the background of the Sudanese people, they will need to know the details of the Sudanese, because for some people, you might see like the darker skinned people, you might think those are like the only Sudanese. But when you look at it, we have brown and much more lighter skinned Sudanese. For somebody who is not very educated on Sudan, then we might not know the difference. We are all Sudanese, but our cultures, barriers, religion, and pretty much ethnic background kept us apart from each other, I think.
Asrar, Catholic Charities has long been involved in the work of helping refugees resettle. Have there been challenges with the broader Sudanese community within the diverse groups of persons who've come from the country as people come to Nashville and come to Tennessee?
Actually, my experience has been really good with Sudanese because I'm from Eastern Sudan. Usually people, when they meet me, is like, hi, you must be from the north. It's like, no, I'm from the east. Because people think it's just Sudan is north and south. They forget about east and west. But we got hesitant when the majority of refugees in 1994 up to 1996 when the professor arrived, it was Southern Sudanese. So my boss is like, you know, like people read and hear about the wars between the North and the South. And so she would ask me like, are they going to be comfortable with you as a caseworker? And it's like, I don't know, let's just wait and see. So like, we have to try it because I'm not sure. I came here very young, like I don't know about all these differences or North or South or war. So my first group that I met at the airport was like, as soon as I said I'm from Sudan, they were like so happy, and I was just their contact person at Catholic Charities. So if they walk in our office and I wasn't there, or it says on my board like return at 4 o'clock, they would wait until 4 o'clock. So people would be like left and right, can I help you with something? It's like, no, I'm waiting for Asrar. She's the only one who can help me. So, and then my coworkers like, tell them if you're not here, we can help them, they need a copy or something. So my experience was very positive, and I was like, I was like people myself, like looking at the media, seeing, so if we can do it here, why can't we do it in Sudan? Like, we could, there is a United States of America, and America is a continent. Sudan is a small country. It's a large country, but compared to a continent, why can't we do this in Sudan? Like, get along. People do get along, but problem is politicians and governments and all that. But we could, as people, really come together and be united.
That's a common experience, isn't it, with refugees around the world who find that as they create an expatriate community, that community has lessons to offer back to the homeland.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I've learned so much, like just working with refugees. I've learned about like the Dinkas, traditions, and I haven't learned that in Sudan because I lived in Eastern Sudan. When I went to college, I went to Khartoum, and then I came here. So I didn't really. I've met like a few Dinkas and a few Nuers here and there, but I didn't know much about them because I wasn't as close as a caseworker. Caseworker is like, I would see them almost every day for the first couple of months. And then we talk, we eat. If I happen to walk in, they're eating lunch, it's like, come on, you're Sudanese, you know the culture. You're supposed to just go wash your hands and sit and eat. Don't say no, thank you, or, they just kind of, if they offer you something, you just need to take it and don't argue. So, but like I've learned so much from them. I would ask them like, how is your village like, or how is your city like? How did you end up here? Where did you go first? So I've learned so much about everybody.
We often think in Western culture about 5 stages of grief. And I say that only because you've thought about how the refugee experience for the Sudanese population, and maybe for refugees more broadly, moves through a similar sort of 5-phase process. Can you explain a bit about that?
Well, thank you so much. My whole definition of the stage process of integration, and when I look at the integration too, it's 2 way of integration. One way is for refugees also to hold on to sort of their culture, while at the same time move on to the culture and system in which they find themselves in. So the 5 stages of integration for successful refugees. Refugees, when they first came, they go through a stage that I call new arrival stage. That stage is when they don't really know anybody else here. They are new to the country. they are so happy to be here because most of all those come here have gone through so much in their life. And a success of arriving to the United States is nothing else to compare with. So that is when they are in honeymoon, they are so happy, they are in joy, and everything else you see about American is an American, and it's good, and there's nothing to be about it. So this stage lasts for only about a year. So this is a new arrival stage. When they got to a year, to a 5-year period, that period is a very difficult period, and mainly it's because you are now faced with challenges.
This is a time of adjustment.
This is a time of adjustment. This is called the adjustment stage. That stage, refugees face language, the barrier of language. They see also that there are challenging role change. They are not used, they're not accustomed to what they have. They now get to where things are different. They are also facing with employment becoming an issue. And if they not have the kind of support that they can get, they cannot really make it. So they need support with family. They also need support within the community that brought them. That stage is difficult because that's where you can see the breakdown of the family. And it is because of how do you go about what? How do you get out of this? So that stage, when the refugees made it, whoever made it from that stage in a 5-year period will go to a stage I call a New American stage. And that New American stage is really a good stage because this is where you realize that, yes, I have achieved something and I can be something in America. I have to set my goal for what I want to be, the goal for my own family, the goal for my own community, and the goal for the country in which I find myself in.
Let me ask you, if at this stage, is that a place where refugees are making decisions about?
This stage is where they're really making a decision. They really are setting up their goal. They are deciding what they want the future to be. They are wanting to attend English classes. They want to become an American citizen, attending citizenship classes. They want to have family. They want to unify themselves with their own relatives that are back home. They are setting goals for not only themselves, but also for their children. And this stage really is what set the rest of your time here in America. You have this stage, if you made it to that far, you can think of becoming an American. A language might not be a big challenge. You're already accustomed to the system and norm of this country. Although there's still some challenge, it's not if you were in stage 2. So stage 3, which is a New American stage, you are calling yourself a New American. And by then, you can also have the citizenship or even exercising your right here in America. This lasts from 10, this is from 5 to 10 years.
So at this point now, someone's been in the country for perhaps a decade.
Yes.
And my guess is there are a number of people who, for any number of reasons, don't make it to that stage.
You're right.
Right. They return, go somewhere else, give up, but any number of things can happen.
There's a lot of things that happen at that stage. People will even get to the stage 3 and stay in there in stage 3, or could even move from stage 3 back to stage 2. And that it is not about how long you've been to the United States. It's how much you work harder enough to set up your future goal. And if you work on your future goal, which you can meet by the timing you're here, that you can live up to the next stage. Otherwise, you can probably meet even going back to the stage in which you passed from.
So at the next stage, you've reached some achievements.
So the next stage, after 10 years in America, from 10 to 15 years in America, you are, if you have done well in the stage 3, now you are in stage 4, which is an achievement stage. That stage, you are recognizing and you are realizing the goal you have met. The goal that you now have education achievement, you have family, you are having a sustained job with a sustained income. You are now supporting your community. If you have a job, the job probably promotes you to becoming somebody in your job, in which the language is no longer an issue to you. By then, you are even, if you're running a small business, which you could call a entrepreneurial thought of a business, you probably can hire people of your own community, or even be a bridge between the community of yours and also the bigger community. You are now a cultural leader to your community. That stage really is an achievement stage, whereby you are already recognizing the fact that you're coming to America, you are acknowledging your dream. So this is a stage 4, which is a very rewarded stage if people get there. So after stage 4, you have the final stage, which I call a leadership stage. The leadership stage is for people like Dr. Mahmoud, people like anybody that is running a big organization and part of the community. You are no longer for your own ethnic community. You are for the community of the United States. You are a community of your city. You are a community of your state. You are a bridge between the country and the other country. You are working onto what will make the American a better nation. You can hire people. You can find a way to help people. You are no longer an ethnic representative. You are a community. You are a country representative. And of course, by then, you achieve what you are here for.
Tell me, I'm interested in each of your thoughts about this. For the Sudanese community, it seems that passage from adjustment to New American is so important, because that's a passage where so many people can be lost. In this community, Dr. Mahmoud, in Nashville, what are the barriers to helping people move in the Sudanese community from that adjustment stage into that New American stage? And then what do we have here that helps that movement occur?
Well, I would remember sometime before Chief Gatluak and Asrar would be contributing with this great work in the Sudanese Community Institution. When we came, we were trying to address this question with Kung, the late Kung, who was one of the first Sudanese to initiate a Sudanese community based on an idea of all Sudanese are unionists. And that time was John Garang time, actually. And then we were trying to address the issue in different ways, that we have to emphasize education. We have to encourage the Sudanese to go into higher education, because this is a very highly competitive society as the United States. And without really putting some vision for a future based on higher education, and that will be difficult for people really to ascend in the hierarchy. And it was fortunate that we had many of the Sudanese in that community that we started who were very ambitious to get higher education. And they were feeling so deprived of that in the Sudan. Now, America means higher education means high technology. It means also acquisition of the preferences of life and alternatives of life. And that's why we were lucky to recruit some of us to go to universities in Nashville. And Nashville is gifted with lots of universities. And I will put, of course, Tennessee State University, because it's a great public school. It encouraged so many of us to be recruited into it. So that was one way for the Sudanese. And then after that, of course, when Gatluak came, there was more encouragement for even those who will not have the high secondary level education to go to the high or the college education. He would have lots of lessons for them to get into the language. The barrier of the language is very huge. So in order to get to higher education, you have to be proficient in the language. And the community was doing something there. The other thing is the social adjustment itself. And in that respect, I would say Asrar and Charities were doing a lot. Because coming to a country like America and Nashville is very different from Sudan. And it might look at that time like Khartoum, like a small town, but it's still, this is a big city. and it has very different rules, and lifestyles are different. And that's why social adjustment here is very important. And I think the Sudanese were not having lots of barriers in that respect because they have extended family structure. And we could see it now in the documentary. We have how the Sudanese are always gathering together and having lots of familial occasions, because that's one way for them to overcome some of the estrangement that they feel as refugees. Now, the barriers. Now, other than education and other than social adjustment issues, interaction with American society, that's extremely important, you know, because you cannot come to a place where you have not been part of it, and then suddenly you are part of it without really making the connections. So I think the connections came, and they were very facilitated through the church and through the mosque for many Muslims, through schools, and through lots of organizations of activism. And some of them are organizations that were reflecting on issues very dear to the Sudanese, like peace in the south, development in Darfur, peace in Darfur, development in the east, peace in the north also. So we were lucky to have Nashvilleian intellectuals and activists embracing us and working with us. Actually, I would conclude very quickly and say, the barriers were not for those of us who came as elites from the Sudan and were up to get the benefits of living in this high-tech industrialized society. But the barriers would be for those who came with some humble social economic status and humble levels of education. And for this, the challenge is still open.
And the most familiar narrative and population that I think you've just described, Dr. Mahmoud, to many Americans is the story of the lost boys of Sudan who transitioned here with very little in terms of understanding. Asrar, talk about that experience.
The lost boys, like when they first arrive, like I said before, I was worried, like they're young, they haven't been through any like big cities like Nashville. I was just like, I hope they just don't get lost in the middle of everything. But amazingly, they are one of the best groups that we had. They went to school while they were employed, you know, like, and they we as a caseworker, we do like a big session of orientations to our clients. But then every time I'm taking them to an appointment in my car, everywhere, this is also like an orientation session. They would ask me like, Ms. Asrar, I want to go to school, but who's going to pay my rent? And I just tell them like, you know, I have 2 kids. Both of them are working part-time and going to school. There's nothing wrong with, you know, because in Sudan, it sounds like there's something wrong with someone who's working and going to school, because you can't do both. It's too hard. Or I think culturally people are like, you know, I've never worked when I was in college. My father just used to hand me money and that's it. But yeah, but I used to tell them like, there's nothing wrong with doing both. And they did very well. And also like the Lost Boys are different than any other group I've worked with. They receive like tremendous support from churches, from Sudanese groups here, from like everybody was supporting them because their story is so touching, like, you know, just young men, no parents. We usually, when we receive refugees, we would receive, most of the times, at least one parent, you know, with the kids. But the Lost Boys are boys without parents, and people read their stories. They saw it in 60 Minutes, and so their stuff like started pouring. And one time, the Lost Boys I went to see them at the apartment, and they said, how can we stop people from bringing us stuff? You know, it's like all those like, you know, women, they just come knock on the door and bring us like pots and pans, and how can we stop? And I said like, the good thing about America, you can say no, thank you. You know, like we have a lot, or you don't have to take everything everybody's giving you. And then I took like whatever they didn't want, or they were so stressed out about it. Like we have all this stuff, we don't know what to do with it. So I took it, and it's like, we can give it to other refugees. You know, some people don't have anything, so.
And yet the war that produced so many refugees, including the Lost Boys over the years, appears to at least have taken a pause, if not be over. Southern Sudan becomes a new republic in July 2011. Nyawal, there must be some thought that my guess is especially younger refugees may have about taking advantage of that opportunity to return.
Absolutely. South Sudan being an independent country this coming July is such a great opportunity for the young people to go back home. Especially for myself, I feel so blessed to have come to this country and be provided with opportunities to go to school and just to grow up in an environment where I'm free to speak my mind and become who I want to be. So what I would want to see for the women of Sudan, or women of South Sudan, is to go back home and to see some kind of change back home for women especially. I would like to see the women there to be free, to be able to speak their mind and to get the education equally with the guys. And as far as employment and everything else, I think they should be equal citizens in Sudan as well.
And that's the experience we were talking about earlier of the community of expatriates returns to their home, and maybe they find it changed, or maybe they change it themselves.
I think it's the change back home. I don't think it's a whole lot since we left, but it has to be changed. The way things are not fair for everybody. And if I have a way, or if I have a voice, I can't exercise it. I grew up having a voice over here, and that's what I would want for the young women of Sudan, to know that they are worthy and they have a voice, and then that they can change their country.
How common do you think that feeling is among the Sudanese that you know here? And I would guess that there are also some folks you know who say, no, this is home now.
I share the feeling with a lot of young people that I talk to. They are very independent, very outspoken, and if we go back home, that would be the common goal, to bring change back home. It might be a little different, or it might not be that easy. Then again, nothing comes easy. The change that we want to bring back home might not be welcome with open arms when we go back home. So,
Gat, I want to ask you, in the time we have left, to talk about the change that comes here because of the presence of the Sudanese community among Nashville and among Middle Tennessee. What's different here because you're here?
Well, what different here because we're here? Well, I think we can see different in many ways. We can see different that people who do not really know what had been going on in Sudan. They had knowledge of Sudan, and now they are contributing so much in many ways to the situation in Sudan. So that is also because of us being here. Like what Dr. Mahmoud already referred, the peace that was signed in 2005. That peace, really, if you could look it up, it was people in Nashville who contacting their representative here. And someone like Bill Press should take a credit for that peace too. He played a significant role to see the peace sign in South Sudan, in Sudan. Well, is it the only thing? No, it's not the only thing. We have come here to educate the world that there's so many things that are going on in Sudan, and that people are aware. And in fact, the issue of Darfur is still going on, and there's still a lot of issues in Sudan. Us here, we are also learning so much, like what Nyawal just mentioned. We have change where we can take that change we have here to back home and then make a difference within our people. So it is two-way. We educate the community here about us, and the community also contribute to our need, and also making change in our need. And I think that's one of the goodness of us being here.
And on that, I want to thank all of you for being with us. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I'd like to thank our panel for participating in this discussion, and thank you for watching. To find out more about Nashville Public Television's Next Door Neighbors series and join the conversation, we invite you to visit our website, wnpt.org/nextdoorneighbors. I'm Tom Lee. Thanks for watching.
Next Door Neighbors is made possible by the support of the Nissan Foundation, the HCA Foundation on behalf of HCA and the TriStar family of hospitals, by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by members of Nashville Public Television.